Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres. If this is the first time you tune in, you'll want to know that we're the top consumer goods and retail podcast in Europe and beyond. We're actually part of a family of podcasts. We have our brothers, the CPG guys, in the other side of the Atlantic. If you want to know what's happening in the US in CPG, as they call it, you have to tune into their podcast. We are us as FMCG Guys, over 250 episodes in, 24,000 followers on LinkedIn. So you're very welcome to join this community. We're also doing events now called Candid Commerce. So if you have any questions about it, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to have you on the podcast, have you at our events. A lot of exciting things happening in this space. And even though it's a time when FMCG or CPG as an industry is a bit compromised, the growth space is a bit complicated. So this year, we've wanted to inspire the community by focusing on brands, like on brands as in brand growth and brand management, and also growth in general, like what companies are growing, because I get that question asked all the time. And I think that right now, one of the most exciting growth areas is coming again from, call them category disruptors. I think that was like a trend that we saw pre-COVID, sorry. I think during COVID, there was a lot of focus on like the big companies again because of their distribution. They could get everywhere in a time where demand was rising a lot. And now again, I think we've gone back to the pre-COVID trend and we're seeing category disruptors doing very well and the traditional companies being very challenged. So it's a very interesting space. So we recently scouted, we're always scouting the market, and we spotted our guests today who are disrupting the pantry staples category, originally from Iceland, which was a country that I was lucky to visit last year, and now making forays abroad, especially in the US. So I have with me Lauren Larsen, who's the Global Marketing Director, and Gardar Stefánsson, who's the CEO and founder of GoodGood. Hey guys, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for joining me today. First of all, let's go right into it. Can you tell me a bit about the business, like what you do, what categories you play in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, GoodGood is a fast-growing food brand. We specialize in no added sugar spreads and other better-for-you products, mainly spreads. We are maybe best known for our jams and fruit spreads, which are basically disrupting the jam category in the United States. We offer the lowest calories, no added sugar, and natural ingredient jams on the market. And since launching in the States, we are now in major retailers, including Walmart, Whole Foods, Kroger, Meijer, H-E-B, Publix, and many others. We were originally founded in Iceland, as you said, in 2015. So our products are sold across Europe and online. And we have a quite growing presence in specialty and health conscious stores in Europe. But in the US, we are in quite good distribution, both natural and conventional stores.
Excellent. And Lauren, so I know that Gardar, you're the CEO, and Lauren, what is your role in the company?
So my role is to kind of, title-wise as marketing director. I oversee, the entire company and how we show up and making sure it's, seamless consumer interaction. But really, at the end of the day, it's to drive the consumer to the shelf to buy products.
Excellent. We'll go into that because I'm very interested to know how, with maybe more limited resources than the big guys, you're able to disrupt the category. But Gardar, back to you. Like, what was your career prior to starting the business?
Well, before founding GoodGood with my co-founders, I had a background just in entrepreneurship and marketing. And I mean, this is my third company. And I always been drawn to creating brands that resonate with people and solve a real problem, specifically in health or wellness. And that passion has led me to the food space. And what I love about the food space is that, everyone knows what's about. Everyone has an opinion. We all have to eat. And there are so many problems there. And so many problems are leading to real, problems, both environmentally, also through people's consumptions of unhealthy foods and so forth, so that we can solve with just offering healthier alternatives. And that's what we do. We go to the core and we try to solve the problems from there.
Was your prior business experience also in CPG or in foods?
Yeah. Before that, I founded 2 salt companies in Iceland. So that's the focus was there to create sustainable salt that was made from the ocean, so natural, flaky salts. So yeah, I've been in the food space my entire entrepreneurial career.
And tell me about like the beginning of starting GoodGood. So you started with spreads. Why spreads? Like, why did you take that category or that product as like an area where you could make an impact?
That's a great question, because we didn't start with spreads. It was a pivot we had to do. And the origin is basically that when I had sold my shares in my salt company, I was approached to my 2 other co-founders, Johan and Ahmed. And they saw this great opportunity with a sweetener production facility in Iceland, in Hafnarfjörður, which I think you've been, Daniel. I think you've been to that town. You told me that.
I've been to Keflavik.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's close to Keflavik. So we went and we acquired that stevia sweetener company that was making stevia drops and packing natural sweeteners. And we're just super pumped and excited about it. We thought okay, this newly allowed sweeteners in the European Union. Stevia was just allowed 2011, and this was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought yes, this is just gonna take over the sugar, and people are gonna stop consuming sugar, and there's gonna be a huge demand for this. And we overproduced like every excited entrepreneurs, and that meant that we had too much stock on hand because it was not selling as fast as we had anticipated, and we had to do something with the stock since we couldn't sell it. Otherwise, it would mean financial loss and, of course, food waste. So from that point, I got the idea to make a jam. Every fall, I have gone to the mountain in Iceland where blueberries grow, really good blueberries. And people here in Iceland, or I'm actually now in Texas, but people in Iceland tend to create jams from these blueberries. And I just remember how appalled I was with how much sugar you are mixing together with these amazing, natural, fruit-bursting, tasty blueberries. So I said to my other co-founders, hey guys, why can't we just make, jams from with our sweeteners? And they thought it was a good idea. So we met in my kitchen, we got some blueberries, we had the sweetener, of course, and we cooked it up. Looked great, smelled great. Then we tried it and it just tasted really, really bad. And from that point, we did it again and again and again until trial 100. Then we had one of the prototypes that we got into stores. And since then, we have modified and updated and upgraded the recipe maybe 500 times. And now we are quite satisfied with the results. And we also see it from the consumers that they really love it and are buying it again and again. So that's how we got into the spreads category. And shortly, we followed up with the chocolate spread. We wanted to create a healthier alternative to Nutella. Then recently, the peanut butters. And then many more secret product launches that we have planned. So
very cool. And what would you say, from a product perspective? Obviously, your value proposition, I think, is being healthier. How much healthier actually is it?
I mean, it's in the name. It's GoodGood, and we thought there's a clever name. Tastes good and it's good for you. And you ask how much healthier it is. And that's the challenge. I mean, it's super easy to create a healthy product. You just take away all the good stuff that, people like to get, like the sweetness or the flavors. And And most of the time, if you want to create a healthy product, it just tastes like paper. You know what I mean? And then you get all the fibers and the proteins or whatever you want. So what we try to do is that we best it, like as food engineers, we try to use the best natural ingredients available to lift up the flavors. So the sweetness is correct. The sodium levels are correct because, and the flavor wise, so it pops up the natural flavors from the berries, for example. And that is quite complicated. And we have, we have a room in Iceland at our office that is just like with failed product innovation because we just couldn't get it right. So that being said, we don't launch anything unless it's right. In terms of our jams, we consider it to be healthier because we have over 60 to 80% fruits per spread. Same time, it has about 88% less calories than our original spreads. And we're not talking about the bad stuff.
Not 88 calories less, 88%.
Yeah. And we're not talking about like the cheap artificial stuff. We're just talking about like the normal jam. They're filled with sugar. So that's one way how we do it. The peanut butters, we add fibers to them that increases the fiber count, and at the same time the sweetness, and it's no stir. And the chocolate spread is 85% less sugar than the leading brand Nutella. So it's just about figuring out where to position yourself. But at the end of the day, we are a no added sugar brand, and when we say no added sugar, we also mean that we don't use fruits or fruit juice or like dates or whatever it is to increase the sweetness, because by the end of the day, that's still sugar. It's fructose and it's high in calories. And we just want to limit the sugar per serving. And we want to be part of everyday life of people so they can have a toast or a pancake or whatever without eating those excessive calories. I mean, we don't mind sugar, it's just like, we don't think sugar should be in everything. If you want sugar, get yourself an ice cream, and you know what you're having. But if you want to get a spread, if you want to get a toast and a spread, just like you want to skip 100 calories. So that's what we tend to do. Just like enjoy your day without having those excessive calories that you need to then worry about it in our modern lives of trying to burn somehow. So,
yeah. And believe it or not, by the way, 2015 is 10 years ago. Believe it or not, maybe it feels like more. Sometimes it feels like more, no?
I mean, it feels like yesterday, time just goes like this. And thank you for reminding me that I'm getting older.
Don't worry, I'm reminding myself as well. What do you think have been like the main milestones for you as a business as you've grown in these 10 years?
I mean, it changes every year. So, I mean, just like when we began and got into that first store, that was with the jams, that was Netto, that you know, that you interviewed the CEO. Yeah, so they were the first store in the world that took the jams in. And that was the biggest milestone of 2016, and seeing people actually buying the jam. And I still have that original jar in the office. Maybe we'll sell it on eBay and later on. But yeah. So that was the milestone. Then it just grows, Then we got our first foreign customer, which was a small pharmacy in Germany. You know what I mean? And then suddenly we are approached by health stores in Netherlands, and then we're at this trade show in Europe, in Cologne, and a US retailer approaches us and say, "Hey guys, this is quite interesting. Why don't you go to the US and get the product there? There's like demand for this." And then we went to Natural Product Expo West in Anaheim, and there we were basically discovered by a big retailer in the States. And then since then, the ball has just been turning, or the wheel has been turning quite fast. And I mean, there are so many milestones from new product innovations, getting into amazing retailers that really make your profit and loss statement look amazing, from just, working with the best people on the planet and creating a brand, and getting smarter people on board that just makes everything amazing and faster and things work, from like supportive shareholders that stood by us through COVID and other times. And so that's the milestone, is just seeing the proof of the concept of creating a product that people love and then buy again and again, and don't discount that value. So I still get the buzz. I stalk Amazon and our websites, and I stalk it not to search for product. I stalk the reviews. It's just like, that's the feedback. Like, we're actually creating something that people are enjoying, and it's helping them often in their journey to become healthier.
And Lauren, I know that you joined the company 3 years ago, when, as we'll talk about it in a minute, about when they were moving to the US or expanding in the US. What made you join an Icelandic company? What seduced you of the proposition?
Yeah, I think Gada said it right. Like, a lot of the products that are better for you don't always taste great. And so, I wasn't actually looking to kind of join a brand that had, sort of that, better for you tasting. Cause I was like, I can figure it out in myself. And they were like, no, you have to try the products. And, I tried the products and I was like, this tastes exactly like I would expect it. Right. And so that's where I was like, this is something different. This is something, that I could actually get behind and, enjoy eating. Right. And so, that's kind of what I look for is, right. I want to believe in the brand that I'm trying to sell. And so, meeting the team as well, right? Meeting Gada, you've met him, and he's great to work with. He's a great leader, and so it was a winning product as well as a winning leader, and that was really what excited me the most.
And why did you decide to go, Gardar? You decided to move to the US, right? I think you're based mostly out of Austin, I believe. What made you do this pretty bold decision and put your life in a suitcase and move to the US to push that business?
Yeah, it was like, I tried to stay as long as I could in Iceland. Me and my wife had 3 kids, and it's just, by the end of the time, it was like it was such a pressure and opportunity, and it was just a need that I welcomed, to move to the States, because there are a couple of, I love Iceland, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful nature, it's a very welcoming society, it's like nice, a lot of nice things, but it's really hard to operate our US business, which is the biggest part of our growth and revenue. Both is the time zones are just quite hard to manage, and then it was just a matter of there's so many opportunities here, and I just had to move there for both our team and customers to be available, and also to accelerate the growth. So that was the main reason for moving to the States.
Is that because also from a product and consumer perspective, you think there's more of an appetite for this type of products in the US than there would be in Europe, for example?
I think that we have a global appetite. We sell across Europe, we sell in South Korea, we also sell in Canada, so it's and the demand is growing and willing, and it's just global demand for no added sugar. I think the key here is how to position it, and we position the product. It's the same ingredient in Europe and USA and Canada. It's just what are the US consumer searching for in terms of wellness? What are their markers for explaining this doesn't have the sugar count and so forth. And that's also a big part. It's it's easy to think you understand the culture from abroad and visiting every now and then, but just living here and breathing the air and drinking the water and going to the supermarkets and talking to the people is just it's the best school you can ever go to. So just since moving here, we have figured out a lot of things that just weren't positioned correctly. And Lauren and I have been doing a lot of great job. Lauren was always like, guys, you should say that, this should be on the packaging. And we're with our arrogant European hats, we're no, Lauren, that's not how you do it. And then, coming here to the US, I'm like saying, Lauren, you were 100% correct. It's just like, this is how we should position the product. I mean, we're not discounting it at all. It's the same ingredients on all marketplaces, but it's like how we approach the customer, how we build the brand, which, how do we tell our story correctly? And that's the key factor of being here, just like getting that across. Plus, it's so much easier to travel, around the States from here. So time zone wise and the frequency of flights and so forth.
So Lauren, along these lines, actually, I'm curious to get your point of view as heading up marketing. When it comes to innovation, like we've talked about, like that you've gone from jams to peanut butter, chocolate spread, etc. What's the thinking when it comes to innovation?
Yeah. It's funny because when I first started, we had 5 categories that we were playing in. And then, as we talked, we strategized, realized where the money was coming from. It was like, hey, let's focus on one category. And instead of going, wide in the store, like let's go really deep in one section. And so that just kind of, you can talk to one buyer, you can spend all your money on one shelf, right? And so when you don't have a ton of funds and you can focus them, your dollar actually goes a lot further. And so we can...
What category did you decide to focus on?
So we focus on anything in a jar, which would be the jams and the spreads in the US. And so if you look outside of the US, there are other products and they just have different reasonings for making sense. But in the US, we do anything that we say we don't go outside of a jar. So if it can fit in a jar, it fits within the strategy.
And yeah, because then you're competing for like the same aisle space and so on. And from there, I think that, I think that sometimes we imagine innovation as like, amazing new product developments, like huge developments that all the company puts a bit into them. But I think that especially from a marketer's perspective, there's like smaller tweaks to innovation that are probably more important than like even like changing like the packaging, for example. How do you go around that part? And I think probably being in a smaller company, you can probably do that quicker than the big players.
Yeah, data is a big part of GoodGood, and that's where we always look first, right? So we're like, what does the data say? And so as we look at our assortment and what we originally were pitching, we had strawberry, which is a big flavor. Raspberry is a top flavor in the category, and blueberry was what was chosen next. Blueberry is not what we would say as an American, is a top flavor of jam, but in Iceland, blueberries, they run wild. That's a big thing, and so it was part of the culture, right? And so I think Gada had mentioned that a little bit of like, it makes sense for them. Why wouldn't it make sense for the US? And so, obviously it did really well. It's still one of our top performers. It's, it's across the brand. It's very different, right? Also in the set. But I think in terms of innovation for us, it was like, how can we match what the consumer's currently buying most, right? And so Concord Grape was another innovation that the team had made. I think there was about 10, I would say, altogether. So that was sort of like, the cherry. We were trying to just like check off the list. The more recent innovation, we kind of went back through and made sure we were capturing the flavors that are growing, any new flavors. So like blackberry was one that was kind of a miss out of the top 10. And so it's just really trying to make sure that we can, the customer's already walking to the shelf. We don't want them to walk away because we didn't have a certain flavor for them. Yeah.
And couple of questions, like in the US, what is were you surprised, I don't know, Gardar, by the taste of the US consumer as opposed to Iceland?
Yeah, I mean, the US consumer has probably the sweetest tooth, I think, of everyone. I still surprised that a muffin is a breakfast. But it's like, yeah, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I mean, I love the food here. Don't get me wrong. I think the US has one of the best, availability of the best foods, in the world. And I love shopping in the supermarket. At the same time, it has a lot of unhealthy products filled with sugar, filled with artificial ingredients. They all taste super sweet, but they are not that good for you. So, I mean, the opportunity is here to grow as a healthier brand, I think, just because of people who are already on the healthy wagon and want to change their life, but also those people that need to eat healthier. And that is where we tend to be the solution for them. Like, we are not as sweet as the sweetest product out there, but we are still sweet. We're not like the hardcore, healthiest paper tasting product out there, but we are like a good stepping stone and hopefully the end destination in terms of spreads for customers that are coming in. So yeah, tons of opportunities here. But yeah, it is what it is. I think people here tend to eat more sweeter things than what I'm used to.
Imagine to what I'm used to being from Barcelona, where like I hardly ever eat sweet things. Like for breakfast, it's always savory. Always bread with like ham or like, and Spanish ham, not like sweet ham.
Yeah, exactly. We eat oatmeal a lot back home. So it's like, that's the, and that's it, or some reason Cheerios is very popular also in Iceland. That's that's also another thing but that's not, that's pretty good nutritionally, in terms of, it has a very low sugar count in it, but yeah, still.
And so, from a marketing perspective, is there a way, there's obviously your product is much more natural and much healthier than a lot of your big competitors, no? We think about chocolate spreads, peanut butter, jams. Is there a way, like what way have you found is best to like be able to convey that when a consumer goes into the store?
Yeah, we don't have the biggest marketing budget at all, and it's just it's so hard to really penetrate. So we, and I'm going to ask Lauren to add to that. So basically, everything is about the foundation. So the product tastes great, So that's the beginning. That's how you get repeated purchases. That's how you build the loyalty base. Product needs to be good. The second is like, how do we portray to the customer that this is actually healthy? So the labels are key. The nutritional facts and ingredients are key. And how can we communicate that through the packaging? So those are the two core factors we tend to work on. Having a really nice designed packaging, at the same time communicating what's inside and why it's good. And then the product tastes good. And then we have a couple of other tricks that I'm going to ask Lauren to elaborate on how we get that message across. Because, it's one victory to get in the store and into the shelf, but, the battle is about getting people to buy the product and move in the product. Otherwise, the store is just going to say, hey guys, didn't work out. We're going to get another brand. So that's the key. So Lauren, would be great if you can tell them about all your secret tricks.
Exactly. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, when entering the US, right, e-com was the narrative. And I think our packaging really spoke to that, right? There was lots of keywords, there was trends that made sense. And so the packaging was that way. I think that was our biggest aha moment was, big brands, right, have spent a lot of money to understand like how the consumer shops. They've trained the consumer to shop a certain way. So if the consumer is used to seeing, XYZ on a packaging and you don't have that, then they have to pick it up, turn it around, right? Figure it out themselves, like you've lost them, right? So you have about 3 seconds. And so within those 3 seconds, that's where we needed our front of pack to really speak to the consumer, how they're used to being spoken to, and sort of, register those like light bulb moments to them of like, we added 88% less, right, calories and stuff like that. So they understand like, hey, wait, maybe what I'm eating, isn't as great for me. What, should I try this, right? And so when they're at the shelf, we kind of have that disruptive atmosphere, for them when they're, considering brand switching. Offline, right, or out of the store and driving people there. There's a few programs that we've utilized, and the cheapest one that we can do is email, right? There's the social media, that. Yes, there's a person behind it, but over, beyond that, you don't really have to spend that much money, right? And so that's really been a key for us. And, the last 3 years, we've been a huge changing, an overhaul of the company. We went through product and, now we're really focused in truly building a community. I think is our biggest, challenge as a brand is just, how do we get our community to speak for us? And we've really, been challenged with that. And it's been really cool to see, and go through and, people are sharing us organically, they're tagging us, like those are the people we really want to lean into. And, I think we're socials become such a stage of like, can you trust the person? And I think that's where it's like, we want to make sure that we always show up authentically as ourselves and with who we're working with. And so, if someone's never tried us, like, we don't want to work with you. If you don't like us, we don't want to work with you. If you can, if you're focused on, a lifestyle that doesn't match ours, like, we don't want to work with you. Even if we know that, hey, we're going to get a big brand share, even if it's free, right? It's like, we really want to make sure that it makes sense in the long run and that we're able to, be honest and stay to, our true selves. I think, one biggest thing is typically, better for you brands tend to have a higher price point. Internally, we've done, our best that we can to give a true price that, is sustainable, not only to ourselves, but also to the consumer, right? Like, we're not, double the price of, the next brand. We're pretty in line, I would say, with the quality that we have. And, that's a huge marketing thing, right? And so, like, if you can get your price right, and you taste really good, you can kind of get that trial, you can get that secondary, then you're going to get the word of mouth. People are going to be talking about you. I think too, we've had back to social, we've sort of had, we've tried this, we've tried that, how do we really do it? And I think similar to our packaging, it's like, why don't we just tell the consumer what they're doing, right? So like, you're saving 88% calories when you make this recipe with us, right? So that was one of our, we kind of had this like aha internal brainstorm moment. It's like, let's, instead of just sharing like, make this cake with us, it's like, hey, save, 150 calories, just telling the consumer exactly what they're going to get out of switching our product, which is exactly what we've done with our packaging.
Is there particular campaign or action that you've taken in these years that you think has been really effective in terms of like, cutting through the noise with limited resources?
I think it's just being consistent, right? I think that was when we, first started, it was like we were posting here, we were posting there, but it's really just about like being consistent and showing up and not being afraid to try different things, right? So like we try to do trends, we try to, do what makes sense for us. I think the biggest thing is like when the brand first started, Iceland was like never talked about. No one knew we were from Iceland. Iceland wasn't on packaging. There was nothing about, anything about Iceland wasn't even relevant. And I think that was such a miss, being an American, I'm like, Iceland is so fun. I had gone there, before I started working for the company. I think that was a huge trend in 2015. I feel like it's taken off since then. And so I think having that conversation, right, and like sort of opening up that avenue of like, hey, we're actually an Icelandic brand. We're made in the EU, right? I think, whether it's better or worse, like people do have a better perception of products made in the EU automatically, right? And so we were able to say a lot in terms of perception without having to do too much. And so today you can see, born in Iceland is on our packaging. It's very subtle, but, it's just a nod to the history and kind of opening that conversation. If someone turns on the back of our pack, when we show up at Expo and those types of industry events, we have an Icelandic flag as well as now a Texas flag, right? Just to kind of like show that conversation so much easier without having to like be like, we're from Iceland. It's just like, it's like, oh, I went to Iceland and I had this product and I didn't even realize it. We love getting those types of things. It's like, I didn't even know I could buy it in the US.
Oh, how many people have walked up to you and said, oh, you're from Norway?
We do get that. Yeah, we get a lot of flag questions a lot.
It's not easy because, Iceland, Norway, Faroe Islands, and Finland, all pretty similar flags, aren't they? So
yeah, I mean, first of all, my team has not allowed me to change my name because they want it to be Icelandic, which it is, But
the patronymic, I guess that it is.
But it's like, the key here is that, we are fine with it if people confuse us with the other Nordic countries. There are so many similarities there. But, being from a small country, it's just like, we are Icelandic, it's some proud there, proudness. As you definitely know yourself, coming from Catalonia, not Spain, right? That's correct. But it's very similar cultural area.
Technically, I come from both,
Yeah.
In terms of like when you do a marketing action or you decide to innovate, you mentioned, Lauren, that a lot of what you base your decision on is on data points, insights. How much do you also, because that's a big debate in the marketing community now, how much also do you rely on your guts? Or your
100%. We look at the data and it's like, okay, this is happening. Maybe we'll test something. We're like, okay, this is what we thought would happen. It didn't happen, right? And so, there's a lot of times where Gardar and I will talk and I'm, pitching him something. I'm like, it just doesn't feel right. And he's like, don't do it. So it's just like, you have to really, remind yourself, even if you're like, hey, this, everything's pointing to like, this is going to, help. It's like, but it just doesn't feel right, And so I think it's a hard, thing to talk about, right? It's like, what do you mean it doesn't feel right? Like you're just like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, and you just can't connect, I think, all the dots. And that's when you just have to kind of like, just pause, and maybe it's just reflecting, right? So if you're kind of like dragging your feet a little bit, if you're like, I don't know. And like, yes, the data's there, but it just doesn't feel like, and all of that data is also old, right? So like at the most it's 4 weeks old. And in the world of social, in the world of trends and how fast everything moves, like 4 weeks is very old, right? It's like the last 72 hours is old, and so I think it's just about, trusting yourself, right? Trusting the people that you're having conversations with, and it's okay if you get it wrong, because you can always go back to it. It's better to kind of pause, take your time a little bit than I think go all in and wish you didn't.
Yeah. So what do you think, Gardar, about that conundrum?
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there's in the marketing world and in any world, there are so many, options and, companies that promise you the world and the moon and, and the skies and the stars, So it's just like, and this is just the fee, and then you're going to grow this. And it's just, I mean, some of them are valid, but in our experience, most of them are not, I mean, it's just, everything takes time. Everything takes an effort. There are no quick solutions that you can pay like upfront and just get like a winning status. And that's like, and it doesn't apply only to small brands. We see this happening with the big brands all the time, and they pour hundreds of millions, into a campaign that just completely flops. In my opinion, it's about the core. It's about like being your authentic self, creating actually a good product that tastes good and, is what you say it is. And then communicating that message across in a fun, or not necessarily fun, but in a way that will engage the consumers to interact, either by purchasing or reaching out. And that's the key here. How to do it? I mean, I think it's like every brand needs to figure out their way to do it. As Lauren said, the world is changing so fast that a 2-hour data is obsolete. So it's just like, so you just have to like lean a little bit into your gut feeling, review the data, even though it's old, just to see where you're progressing, because we learn from history, we learn from historic data, and often make the right decision from there. So I am a big proponent of reflecting and, testing and trying. And I often say like, hey, let's, try this out in a small scale. It's so much better to fail in a small scale than just going gun blazing out there and just putting everything into it. You know what I mean? So test, trial, repeat, and then you will figure out a good pattern that you can rely on, at least for some period of time.
And building a brand, great. But what about like convincing the people on the retail side, the buyers, to bring your products in? Like, how have you typically been successful getting into big retailers?
Yeah, I mean, we were discovered on an exhibition, and there was a big retailer that approached us, and this theme of this call has been a little bit like, yes, we're from Iceland. We thought we had a certain perception of the world, and we thought, for example, that this retailer was just a one store chain. But then that retailer was one of the biggest in the States, and they got the product in, and then we started to grow. And then you just have to succeed, you have to prove that you did well. So the key there is like, because everyone is watching everyone, and the buyer, they just want to maximize their shelf space, the real estate that they are basically renting to you, So you need to show them growth. You need to sell the products, even though they have ownership of it, and you need to prove yourself from there. So, I mean, we live in a capitalistic world, so you need to show them the growth and get them there. So we tend to lean on the product first. Just tastes great. There's a market for it. Look at the data. Look how much sugar is out there. See the rise of diabetes. See the market share of people searching for healthier alternatives. Then we tend to show them this is what we did with similar retailers. And this is like how we support it, and this is the product innovation, and this is how much you're gonna grow with us, like by selecting us. In the beginning, it was just all passion, hard out, like, fighting for it. Like, now it's a little bit more still there, it's always the first slide, but back in the day, it was like 90% of the presentation just to get them to believe in you. And the same rules there applied like with everything alive. You just have to convince them. And the best way to convince them is just to be authentic and fighting for what you truly think is great. And that's just like Smith is all over, people just get, you can feel the passion, and that's the best currency for entrepreneurship to have, is to completely, share that at an authentic level and being deadly honest. That's my 2 cents.
And what are the main key accounts or also international markets that we can find your products in now?
Yeah, so we are we're in all Whole Foods stores in the States. We are in Publix, we are in Meijer, we're in Walmart, in H-E-B. We're going into all Kroger. No, 2,000 Kroger store this week.
Nice.
We're in so many great retailers across the board, and we're in Sprouts, Fresh Market. Yeah, so many other great retailers that I definitely am forgetting to talk about, but you can find them on our store locator. We're also in Canada.
We're a European.
Yeah. And in Europe, we are available in all stores in Iceland. We are in Denmark in Co-op. We're in K-Chain in Finland. We're online in Spain, and in Holland, in the Netherlands, we are in Holland and Barrett, and the UK, Holland and Barrett, and then we are in a couple of stores in Ireland as well. And in South Korea, we are in some stores there, Kmart, I think.
Nice. So you're currently 15 people, and you're over 10 million revenue. How have you been able to keep like such a lean and simple structure?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we tend to outsource the things that we, can do ourselves. So we used to be producers, and we used to produce in Iceland, but then it just didn't make sense to import the ingredients there and then export. So we moved the production to the Netherlands and Belgium. That saved us a lot of headaches and manpower, because we just found partners that are better than us. So what we tend to do is that the things that we are best in doing, building the brand, handling the sales, we tend to do that ourselves. But, everything else, we try to find partners that are extremely good to work with and do a better job than we would do ourselves. So it's also just about creating realistic goals as a company. We know that we can't be everywhere at the same time. So we have adopted a pretty cool mechanism that is called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, which is a mechanism that is used in the software world. Started with Intel and Google uses it, and many other companies. But we thought it was interesting to adopt this methods for a CPG company, because we are in a completely different world. We are bound by scalability. We can't be, so we have a physical product and so forth. So we use that, and that's a pretty good, filtering system in the beginning on just like, where should our priorities be? It's just like, and then create it from there. And from there, we just set up like a set of priorities that then we turn into the objectives. And then we have key results to measure how we're going to get there. And then we have tons of actions. So from there, we just know that, like in the US in marketing, and Lauren can speak about that, our main goal is to get store sales, get people to the stores, and they buy it from there. And from there, you can create your set of actions and how to spend your time, instead of like saying, we should be on every event, possible, it's just, or online focused, really online focused, and just grow from there. We could do that, but it just helps us to have the system in place so we know our priorities, and that's how we measure our success. It's like, these are priorities. these are the measurables, and the success is based on how we, the measurements we create to see how we progress there.
And how have you found it, Lauren, having worked in other bigger CPGs before?
Yeah, it's been really nice. Just the OKR process is really helpful because it really helps you say no, and I think that's the biggest thing is that's your time, right? You only have so much time, and being able to choose what you can and can't work on can kind of get murky, especially in a smaller company when you're, more hats, right? We're a larger company, you're pretty siloed, you do your thing and that's it. Where at this company, where I'm working in operations, I'm working in sales, I'm working, across, all different functions. And so I think the most important thing is to be able to say no and have like a valid reason that no one can push back on you, right? So it's like, hey, this is not going to tick this box, so I'm saying no to this, right? Or like, hey, we're going to pause this, or we're going to move on from this, that type of thing. I think that really helps you just balance your time and make sure you're focusing on the right priorities.
I'm going to add also, Daniel, because you asked like, how can you do that? So few people, and we have great systems in place. So the backbone of the company is like, we got the best software, to make the right predictions, right? The production, shipping, and so forth. We're very data oriented and related. We have one person of the 15-person team that is just in data and, translating that into actions and where to pivot and where to do, better. So having a good foundational systems behind what we do just save times, So that's also a big part of it. That also relates to the OKRs, that we actually have the data to, make us make the right decisions.
What does a OKR stand for?
It stands for objectives and key results.
Uh-huh.
And it's we recommend everyone to try to explore that universe. It's great. Objective should be a big, hairy, audacious goal that people should try to attain, and then you use the key results on to get there. So, like, let's say we want to, be in every city in the US, and then you create a key result that is like, we want to get like 5 cities by Q1. These are the cities, and then you try to get into those cities and so forth. So you track it on a quarterly basis, and most of the time it's, you're not going to get to that big objective, but you're going to do everything you can to get there. So if you get 80% there of it, it often beats the realistic assumption that could be like 20%, So it's just like aspiring people to do more, and it's a good, clean environment to work on. And like Lauren said, it just helps you to say no to certain assignments,
And looking forward, what are the next goals for you guys as a business? What should we expect from you guys?
I mean, our biggest goal is to become a top 5 spread brand in the United States, and then with our global growth. So we really want to be like when you go to the spread element store, you're gonna see at least 2 rows of GoodGood, that you as a consumer can get, knowing that, hey, tastes great, saving on calories, natural ingredients, and I want to mix that jam with that peanut butter spread that I just launched. So it's just like being that everyday life amazing solution that people will like, and being in people's pantries that they will then buy again. So that's our goal, to be that number one selection of our customers.
Excellent. Well, look, this wouldn't be an FMCG Guys episode without our famous last question, which is that with everything that you've learned during your career, if you went back to your younger selves as you were starting and you had to give yourselves one piece of advice, what would it be? Lauren, maybe you can start.
I'd say, good things take time. And the reason you're not getting what you think you want is because it's not actually what you need.
Gardar, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, start sooner, start small, be happy with being small, and learn from your mistakes from there, and then, grow on a good, conscious, reflecting base, and yeah, be always nice, and true.
Excellent. Love these 2 pieces of advice. I'm going to try to do a quick roundup of our conversation. Who would have said that a disruptor in the jams category is such an American thing to have, like, your peanut butter for breakfast, your jam would be coming from Iceland, right? I think that is fascinating. But I think that, as you said, Gardar, at the beginning, you're coming like you have a very good reason to exist. The fact that you can bring a value proposition of a spread that has 88% less calories. I mean, that's pretty awesome in itself. And on top of it, that the ingredients are more natural. And as you said, if you take everything bad, it stops tasting good. But if you put on other alternatives, it can still taste good. So I think that that's super interesting. Also, the bold move that you've done going to the US, Lauren, your marketing director, is based in the US. You've moved to the US. I think that's an interesting one. And we do have a good US audience. So I'm sure they'll be looking for you in the store soon. I like the fact that also, I think that smaller companies or founder-led companies like you guys wouldn't be considered in general by common knowledge to be data-driven, but obviously you guys are in a lot of ways. The fact that you have one person that's entirely dedicated to data, that a lot of your decisions are based on insights, I thought was very interesting. Although with Lauren, we did speak about the balance about trusting your gut also. And I think you mentioned that, Gardar, as well, to really think of the core and what you mean as a brand. So I think that it's finding that balance. I think the key, I am looking forward to seeing you guys go along the lines of building a community, because I think that in marketing is a very interesting space. The fact of the good learning for me that products made in the EU have a good reputation in the US market, I think is an interesting one. I was pretty impressed by the number of retailers you've gone into. And finally, I thought that, again, related to the data part, the management by objectives and making it all very objective in terms of what you're wanting to achieve, what the expectations are, what the particular employees' expectations are, I think is a good exercise, because I think that sometimes in early stages, companies do struggle with expectation management, with goals and so on. So I think that to have that crystal clear and have that transparent accountability is very positive. So yeah, really enjoyed having you guys on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Dan. It was a great show. Great conversation and good questions and discussion. So thank you so much.
I will leave you guys contacts on your LinkedIn profiles on the show notes. So if anyone wants to learn more about GoodGood, you're very welcome. I think you're very welcome to get in touch, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Thanks, guys. And thanks to everyone in the audience. We'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys every Wednesday and every Saturday. Have a nice one.